I'm Tanya Peel. I'm creating a show mixed with family recipes and vintage finds. When I find a vintage dish, I'm always wondering, if you could talk, what would your story be? Where did you come from, and whose hands have touched you? Whose home have you been in, and how far did you travel to get to me? After discovering a new vintage piece, I'm almost always thinking about a meal my mom or granny prepared for me, how that made me feel to eat something so delicious made with love, and how I can serve up my own creations to feed my family and friends. It's how I show love. So if you think about it, it makes sense to blend the two, because every dish has a story.
Episode 5, The Griswold Chronicles and Southern Cream Corn. I can't wait to share with you one of my most cherished side dishes I grew up eating, Southern cream corn. It isn't just food, it's tradition. Our version takes time and patience, but every bite carries that kind of flavor you only get when history meets kitchen. This recipe has been passed down through generations in my family, and the secret isn't just the technique, it's in the vessel. Because down here, we don't just cook, we cook with history. And in my kitchen, that means cast iron. Today I'm using a Griswold skillet, a piece of cookware that's been in American kitchens for more than a century. But before we put it to work, let me tell you how Griswold first came into my life. I was traveling through South Dakota with one of my best girlfriends when we spotted an antique store called Wanda's Finds. Wandering through the aisles, I stumbled upon 3 dusty cast iron enamelware dishes with bright red bottoms. When I flipped them over, I saw a name I didn't know yet, Griswold. They weren't cheap, and Wanda drove a hard bargain, God bless her. But I left with 3 treasures that would teach me one of the richest kitchen stories of America. Wanda kept repeating, "They're very collectible," and she was right. I had no idea then that I was holding pieces from what many consider America's finest cast iron manufacturer. Since that day, I've added this skillet, made between 1920 and 1950, to my collection. It's still a workhorse, possibly 100 years old, and every time I hold it, I wonder about the cooks who used it before me. The Griswold story begins in 1865 in Erie, Pennsylvania, when Matthew Griswold and his cousins, who were brothers, J.C. and Samuel Selden, started a little factory on the Erie Extension Canal. But here's the twist. They weren't making cookware at all. They were making door hinges. The company was called the Butt Factory, named after their separable butt hinges, along with stovepipe dampers and thimbles. It wasn't until 1870s, 10 years later, that Matthew Griswold made the decision that would define their legacy: cast iron cookware. From skillets to waffle irons, their pieces soon bore the proud Erie and Griswold markings. Think about it. These items come from a company that started out making hinges. That's the magic of history in the kitchen. The company grew fast. By 1884, Matthew bought out his cousins and rebuilt after a devastating fire. In 1887, their name officially became the Griswold Manufacturing Company. What sets Griswold apart wasn't size or speed, it was the quality. While others were mass-producing heavy, rough pans, Griswold perfected a fine-grained sand casting process that created a silky smooth cooking surface so good collectors today call them the holy grail of cast iron. By the 1920s and 30s, Griswold was producing stunning enamelware pieces: blues, whites, yellows, and the deep red that first caught my eye in Wanda's shop. Their pieces weren't just beautiful, they were meticulously marked with logo, size numbers, and pattern codes that told you exactly when and where they were made. To collectors, these aren't just logos, they're timestamps, little fingerprints of history. Matthew Griswold himself wasn't only a businessman. He served 2 terms in Congress before passing in 1919. His sons carried the company through its golden years from 1900 to 1940. And then there's my favorite part of the Griswold story. Miss Etta Moses, known to the world as Aunt Ellen. She worked at Griswold for over 50 years, beginning as a secretary and then answering letters from home cooks. By the 1920s, she became a household name, publishing recipes and advice that reached millions. Her booklet on waterless cooking came free with every Dutch oven. She was even featured in Good Housekeeping ads. Imagine writing to Griswold with a question about supper, and Aunt Ellen herself sending you back a recipe with encouragement. She wasn't just answering letters, she was building community. Griswold became more than a brand. It became a trusted kitchen companion. But all golden ages fade. By the 1940s, financial struggles and labor disputes shook the company. In 1946, the founding family sold, and in 1957, the Erie plant closed, ending 92 years of American cast iron tradition. That's why pieces like this skillet from the 1920s to 50s are so special. They're not just pans, they're living artifacts, carrying the fingerprints of generations before us. And now, it's time to put this skillet to work. Today we're making authentic Southern cream corn, the way my family has made it for generations. It's slow, it's careful, and it's worth every minute. Just as the skillet has been passed down, so has this recipe. Together they honor two traditions, the craftsmanship of Erie, Pennsylvania, and the flavors of the American South. We've honored the history, now let's honor the flavor. Let's get cooking some Southern cream corn. Cream corn is an annual affair in my family's home, and it typically involves a lot of people because we don't just buy a few cobs of corn, we usually have about 4 to 5 bushels, and so it's a group effort. So I'm super excited to bring to you the real way that Southern cream corn should be prepared. Now, there's many different ways that people zhuzh their cream corn up, but this is the traditional Southern cream corn recipe. I've always said to my friends in California when they've come over for dinner that if you're eating cream corn, you know you're loved. Otherwise, I wouldn't make it for you. It's a lot of work. It's really hard work. Now, lots of people have their idea about how to do their own version of cream corn, and I think that's great. But we keep it very simple as far as the seasonings go. It has a little salt, butter, and milk, or half and half. Really, you're letting the variety of the corn shine through to your recipe. I believe that Georgia and Alabama has some of the better varieties for sweet corn, and it really does make a difference. We were lucky enough to be up in Oxnard this weekend where they had just picked their corn, and this is a white sweet corn. We only have 3 different varieties that are grown in California, and I believe it's a Jubilee variety, so we'll see. I won't know if I think it's as good as Alabama until I prepare it and I taste it, but we're gonna go with it. So the very first thing you wanna do is get yourself a bowl. Typically we just make a mess on the ground when we're on the back porch. And we all sit around and we all have our different tools. My father has come up with a clever way to get the silks off much easier. He has a soft-headed brush that he puts on the end of his cordless drill, and it helps him take off the silks. It's all about speeding up the process when you have multiple bushels to do. So then that's kind of like the first go through, right? And then you get it into the kitchen and then you start really cleaning it up because you have to like get all of the silks off if you want to make really good cream corn. So you can imagine if you've got like bushels of this, it makes a mess. But you can pretty much get in your kitchen. I'm not making too much of a mess. I probably should be wearing an apron, but I never do. I would say that this amount of corn, it doesn't make a lot. It probably makes about, depending on what kind of eaters you have over for dinner, enough for like 6 to 8 people. It's the best. Southern cream corn is the best. There's nothing like it. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is take it to the sink and get it cleaned up even more. So it's important to have some kind of soft bristle brush so you can get the silks out. I like to run my water and hold my cob underneath and just lightly take the silks off. This is the most tedious part, I find. I like to kind of hold my corn in the water with the water running down, and as I brush down to help get the silks buried in the little corn kernels. All right, part 3 of the corn. So I need to put my glasses on, otherwise I can't see what I'm doing. So this is a very light brush, like I said, but it's important that you get all of these silks out. So this is kind of like the second washing, if you will. All right, so I'll spend the next probably 20 minutes going through these cobs one by one and making sure that they're all cleaned up. So you can see why I joke that I'm not making this for people that I really don't love. So it's work, but there's something meditative about it too, right? So there's that. Sometimes you can get away from your day, go to your little happy place while you clean corn. Now, some people may not take as much time as some of us do getting all of these silks out of the corn, but I just think it makes it perfect when you take the time to do this. And so that's why it's important for you to understand that it's actually a family affair, family and friends, because you sit around and you talk about fun things. The reason why I'm so particular about keeping this corn recipe as pure as possible and not overwhelming it with spices and that kind of thing is because it's really about the harvest of your vegetables. And in the South, there's nothing better than a plate full of like homegrown tomatoes, creamed corn, and just doing like a whole dinner of vegetables. It's a staple. I'm keeping a light touch. You don't want to bruise or damage the kernels. All the kernels are full of the milk, which is going to be the cream for the cream corn. So this is a very long day when you're putting up corn, sometimes several days, depending on how many bushels you choose to do. You know, over the years, I've had great versions of cream corn. And I'm not saying that the ones that don't do this recipe aren't absolutely delicious. And you could even argue, why go through the hassle of doing all of this? It's a family tradition. It's how we do it. It's how it's supposed to be. All right, I'm going to clean up and then we'll get to cutting. So I find it's best to have a very large bowl and to have one with very tall sides because you're going to get spattered. That's just a part of the process here. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a very, very sharp knife and you're going to cut very slowly and gently just the tip of the kernel off. You'll go all the way around and do that. And then once all the tips are off, I take a butter knife and you take it and you slide it down the cob and it pops out a seed and the milk. And that's the basis of your creamed corn. Some people like to rest it in the bowl to give some ability to keep it stable and just get the tip off. And the more comfortable you get it and the sharper your knife is, you can kind of slide it down the cob, but you want to make sure you're only getting the tip. All right, so you see how we just have the tips, and now we want to take our knife and slide it down the side. So now you see why you want a bowl with high sides. So if you keep your knife kind of angled down, it will push the spatter more towards the bowl. I go around a couple of times just to make sure that I have all the milk and the seeds. All right. Cob one down. Now this is clearly a Southern recipe, but it's really a Native American recipe. This is how the natives used to eat their corn. So like anything in life, those who come before us teach us. Glad that's over. I'm going to take off my glasses now. So as you can see, 11 cobs of corn doesn't produce that much corn, but look at that goodness. Do you see the milk? That's what you're looking for. So the next thing to do is just cook it. It only takes about 20 minutes to cook it down. All right, here we go. I'm so excited. I just tasted the corn. It's super sweet. It's going to be so good. I can't express to you how important it is to have fresh corn when you're doing this. Makes all the difference in the world. So you want your pan on about medium high. And then we're going to take all of our corn. We're going to pop it in the pan. And you want to make sure that you get it all. Because as you see, we had to work really hard for this. So if you get corn that isn't juicy, then you can add some half and half to it. I have a little on the side just in case I need any. So our recipe is for like every 5 to 6 cobs of corn, we'll do a teaspoon of salt. So I'm going to do about 2 teaspoons, right? And we love black pepper in ours, not too much. And then we need butter. So again, for every 5 to 6 cobs of corn, we do about 2 tablespoons of butter. So I'm going to put 4 pads in. Actually, I'm going to put in just a touch of half and half. I mean, just like a tablespoon. And so you want to make sure that you're stirring this and you don't let it stick to the bottom. So you kind of have to tend to it. Once it gets going and the pan comes up to temperature, I'll back it down a little bit. I know people want to go, oh, I'm going to doctor this up. Like I said earlier, you really don't. You want the purity of the corn. That's why you go through all the trouble to cut the corn off the cob this way. When you go through the steps of cutting the tip off and then popping the seed and the milk out, you want to leave it in its most pure state. You just do. And I wish I could give everybody watching this a taste at home, because once you've had it this way and you have really good homegrown sweet corn, it's the most magical thing in the whole wide world. So you can see how it's starting to bubble around the edges. So the pan is now hot. So I'm going to back it down to medium. And then you just kind of let it cook down for a good 15 to 20 minutes. Anybody who's had this Southern cream corn falls in love with it. And so many people are crazy for corn. Crazy for corn. I'm super excited because this is what we're having for dinner tonight. And now I'm going to back it down between low and medium. Depends on how hot your flame is, whether you cook on gas or electric, but you want it to have heat to it, but you don't want it to be too hot so it burns. So you want to get it to just where it's bubbling around, cooking at a consistent heat, but not burning the bottom. That is so good. But everything's starting to come together. Wow, this is really good corn. You can see how it's starting to heat up the bottom, so I'm actually going to go even to low. Oh, I'm so excited. It's still piping hot. Look how beautiful this is. I mean, this is all the cream from the corn. Really, it's like a little bit of sugar coming through from the sweetness of the corn with just enough salt to give it that nice savory balance. It's tender, but yet a little bit of crunch in the little kernel. It's so good. Imagine it with a plate of tomatoes and butter beans, jalapeno cornbread. I hope you take the opportunity to do this if you live somewhere where you get fresh sweet corn. It really is a treat. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a like. There's a world of flavors and stories still to explore, and I'd love to have you along for the journey. Until next time, happy eating, and remember, every dish has a story.